Republican Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska. Thanks so much for joining us, Senator.
Thanks for having me, Jake. Thanks for coming to Nebraska.
So let's do the forensic accounting of what happened on Friday. At 6:19 a.m., you went on Fox and Friends and you touted the idea of first repealing Obamacare, then replacing it at a later date. At 6:37 a.m., President Trump embraced the idea on Twitter, writing, quote, Republican senators unable to pass what they're working on now, they should immediately repeal and then replace at a later date. Tell us about any behind-the-scenes conversations that brought President Trump around to this, what is a new position for him.
Well, I'm not sure that the TikTok part is all that interesting, but I've been definitely working with the White House and the president's senior team over the couple days leading up to that. But I think the most important thing to say is Republicans ran on repeal and on replace. The president ran on repeal and replace. We've been working on that for about 4 months. And if Leader McConnell can get us across the finish line in a combined repeal and replace, I'd like to see that happen. It needs to be a good replace. But if we can do a combined repeal and replace over the next week, that's great. If we can't, though, then there's no reason to walk away. We should do repeal with a delay. Let's be clear. I don't want to see anybody thrown off the coverage they have now. I would want a delay so that we could get straight to work. And then I think the president should call on the Senate to cancel our August state work period. It's important to work in your state. It's important to travel. It's important to listen to your constituents. But I think we should get straight to work at around-the-clock hearings on the replace plan. But I think we need to do both repeal and replace, and I'm a little agnostic into whether they're paired or separated.
So Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell seemed to reject your idea on Saturday. He said he'll stick with the path of doing it all at once. Have you spoken with Senator McConnell, or have you gotten any sense of how much support there might be among Republican senators for this plan of repeal first, replace at a later date?
You know, I'm a rookie. I'm one of only 5 people in the U.S. Senate who's never been a politician before. I think I'm 91st in seniority, which means I'm mistaken for a page all the time walking through the halls of Congress. So I try to keep most of my conversations with leadership in private, and I try to be constructive. And obviously, Leader McConnell is the leader on this bill. And if in the next week he can get us a combined repeal and replace, again, a good replace, but if he can do that, I'd like to support that. If he can't, though, I think every Republican senator except one, Susan Collins of Maine, is the only Republican senator who hasn't already repeatedly explained that they're for repeal and for replace and voted for repeal. Remember, in December of 2015, every Republican senator, except, again, Susan Collins, everybody voted for a repeal plan. The only thing then was that President Obama vetoed it. Now President Trump would sign it. Again, I want to add a delay to its implementation date so that if we did full repeal, there would be time, but we should get to work on replace. Right now, we're trying to get 50 of 52 plus the vice president to agree on a really complicated combined repeal and replace plan. I'd like to say, let's do the repeal, then let's try to get 60 out of 100 senators. Let's bring everybody into the room. Let's do this full-time, 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. Let's cancel the August state work period, and let's do it in full public view and have hearings and get to work on something that works better than Obamacare. We pledge that, and the American people deserve that.
So let's talk about what this might mean for the American people. CBO, in a January analysis, said that repealing Obamacare without replacing it at the same time would result in 32 million more uninsured by 2026. Now, obviously, millions would be choosing not to have insurance, but also millions of them would lose Medicaid or would no longer be able to afford private insurance because of the stipends Obamacare asks. Now, offers. Your strategy is that there will be a plan for them, that the repeal will be delayed. But isn't that kind of gambling with other people's health? You're relying on, counting on the Senate to get its act together. What if it doesn't, and then all these people have nothing?
Yeah, so first of all, you're exactly right. We're talking about something different than what they're talking about, because I'm not talking about repeal only. Republicans need to stop pretending that everything worked well in American health care before 2009-10 when Obamacare was passed. And Democrats, frankly, need to stop pretending that Obamacare is working. When you're back here in rural Nebraska, I talked to farmer after farmer after farmer over the last week who are now paying between $20,000 and $30,000 a year in health expenditures because Obamacare's promise of reduced reduced premiums $2,500 per family wasn't true. It raised them on average nationally in the individual insurance market more than $3,200. That's a $5,700 delta over what President Obama promised. CBO is filled with lots of well-meaning people, and they're good at certain kinds of analysis. But analyzing macro, long-term, highly complex, dynamic social programs, they've almost never been right. Remember, when they scored the equivalent of CBO in the mid-1960s, scored what Medicare would cost in its first decade, they were off by 1,100%. It cost 11 times as much in the first decade as they projected. Regularly, government scorekeepers underestimate costs and they overestimate coverage. We need to do better than Obamacare, and the Republican plan that I'm proposing, and again, I'm still willing to support a combined repeal and replace if our leader can get a good replace plan across the finish line in the next week when we come back from this work period. But if not, we should unbundle them. Republicans gave their word they were going to repeal. We should do it. We should delay its implementation date, and all 100 senators should get before the American people on camera 18 hours a day for all of August, and we should do better than Obamacare. We can, we promised it, and the people deserve it.
So fully repealing Obamacare would amount to a tax cut of $700 billion approximately, about half of which would go to the top 1%, people who make more than $875,000 per year. That's because they pay those taxes, about 50% of them as of now. Now, one of your Republican colleagues, Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, he's worried about both the policy and the politics of this. Let me read you what he said. Quote, "I want to make sure that we're not in a situation where we're cutting taxes for the wealthy and at the same time basically for lower income citizens passing a larger burden on to them." Is that a concern that you share as well?
It is. I mean, it's a long argument to try to do in soundbite form on TV, but I would say that we need to do a much better job as Republicans of explaining that we do wholeheartedly embrace a social welfare safety net for the poorest and sickest among us. I think that Obamacare should be fully repealed. So when you do that, you would be getting rid of those taxes, but then we should be having the conversation about what replace looks like. And if Leader McConnell proposes a strategy right now where we try to get health reform right, and you separate the tax cut portion of that to some future conversation about tax cuts, I would be willing to wholeheartedly embrace that, because I think the most important thing for us right now is to get a health care reform plan in place for middle-class Americans and for those who are poorest and sickest among us. Again, I'm one of the only people in the Congress who's never been a politician before doing this, and I said over and over and over again when I lived on a campaign bus with my little kids in 2013 and 14, I believe in a growing economy, and a growing economy benefits from not having Washington crowd out other things. So there's all sorts of tax reform that I think is fundamental and critically important to a dynamic economy. But I don't leave my family for 4 or 5 days every week to go to D.C. because I care all that much about the marginal tax rate of the top 1%. I care about a growing economy. But if we could do health reform first and have the tax reform conversation second, fine by me.
President Trump celebrated the week leading up to the 4th of July by relentlessly attacking journalists, ranging from personal attacks on a cable news host's physical appearance to wholesale smears of CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. We're back with Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska. Senator, does this trouble you at all?
Sure. I mean, there's an important distinction to draw between bad stories or crappy coverage and the right that citizens have to argue about that and complain about that, and trying to weaponize distrust. The First Amendment is the beating heart of the American experiment, and you don't get to separate the freedoms that are in there. There are 5 freedoms in the First Amendment: religion, speech, press, assembly, and protest. And you don't have religion without assembly. You don't have speech without press. We all need to celebrate all 5 of those freedoms, because that's how the e pluribus unum stuff works, right? We differ about really big and important things in this country, and then we come together around the First Amendment, which is an affirmation of the fact that people are free before government. I mean, this is the 4th of July weekend. The Declaration of Independence is pretty dang clear about this, that we think government is just our shared tool to secure those rights that we have by nature. And so we need to affirm those rights. We need to do that civic and catechetical stuff to teach the next generation what America's about. So we need more of that from everybody in this conversation.
You talked about weaponizing distrust. Could you expand on that? It sounds like you're saying this is more than just lashing out. This is a strategy by the president so as to sow seeds of mistrust in anyone who provides any critical coverage.
I mean, we could go full nerd on this, but the reality is journalism is really going to change a lot more in the digital era. And we have a risk of getting to a place where we don't have shared public facts. A republic will not work if we don't have shared facts. I'm the third most conservative guy in the Senate by voting record, but I sit in Daniel Patrick Moynihan's desk on the floor of the U.S. Senate on purpose because he's the author of that famous quote that you're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts. The only way the republic can work is if we come together and we defend each other's rights to say things that we differ about. We defend each other's rights to publish journalism and pieces and things that we then want to argue about. I agree with the president that there is a lot of crappy journalism out there. Jake, I think you would agree that there's a whole bunch of clickbait out there in the world right now.
Of course.
And it's going to barriers to entry to new journalism are going to go down, down, down. And so it is going to be possible in the next 3 and 5 and 10 years for people to surround themselves only with echo chambers and silos of people that already believe only what they believe. That's a recipe for a new kind of tribalism, and America won't work if we do that. So we need to come together as a people and reteach our kids what the First Amendment is about. And it's not helpful to call the press the enemy of the American people. There are a whole bunch of particular journalists who should be called out for particular stories that aren't good enough. There should be journalistic ethics and integrity. Journalistic agencies and media organizations should admit when they make mistakes, and they should issue corrections, and they should fire people. And we've seen a little bit of that the last week. That's a good thing. We should be celebrating it.
You recently wrote a book called The Vanishing American Adult. I want to read an excerpt. Quote, we're living in an America of perpetual adolescence. Our kids don't know what an adult is anymore or how to become one. Many don't see a reason even to try. Perhaps more problematic, the older generations have forgotten that we need to plan to teach them. It's our fault more than theirs, unquote. In your opinion, when did this shift in our culture start, and what brought it about?
Yeah, so The Vanishing American Adult is not a blame-laying book. It's 2/3 constructive project. How do we raise our kids better in an era of perpetual adolescence? Because that's the new thing, right? Adolescence is a gift. The idea that you have a kind of greenhouse stage as you transition from the dependency of early childhood to the independence of adulthood, that greenhouse transition phase of adolescence where just because you hit puberty, just because you become biologically an adult, we don't now think that you have to be emotionally, morally, financially, school leaving, household construction-wise. You don't have to be fully independent just because you're 13 or 14. That's a gift. But perpetual adolescence is a danger. We should be able to distinguish between 10 and 15 and 20 and 25-year-olds, and it's increasingly difficult to do that. It's a very new thing. Bunch of causes. One is we live at the richest time in the richest nation in all of human history, and so our kids have largely been insulated from necessity. I think the most fundamental thing to say about teen years right now compared to, say, 40 or 50 or 60 years ago, and again, this is not beating up on millennials. This is the environment in which they're growing up because of our societal-wide riches. Even for our lower middle class folks, we're still the richest people in human history. They're insulated from work in ways that have never been before. So most kids used to grow up going from 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 years old across human history and across nations, being around their parents' work. Our kids aren't. So right now, instead of having a distinction between production and consumption in their gut as they grow, we tend to distinguish between hours and years in school and then all the consumer activities that they have outside of school. That won't work in a republic that's going to pass on a sort of robust sense that self-discipline, self-control, self-governance is the alternative to other discipline, other control, governmental governance. We believe that people and their dignity and their virtue is prior to government. Families do that, communities do that, neighborhoods do that, development of work ethic does that, and then government is supposed to be a place where we maintain that framework for ordered liberty. The problem we have right now, and I'll pull up here, but we're hollowing out local community and neighborhoods. Some of that's massive economic change, but at the same time, we're politicizing our national conversations so that the only community a lot of people have is what they project onto Republican and Democratic parties. These parties are pretty bankrupt intellectually. They're not interesting enough to put your grand hopes and dreams on. We need a recovery of the local and the neighborly.
And I would recommend anyone out there who found what the senator said interesting to read his book. It is a provocative read. Before you go, Senator, I want to ask you, you've built a national reputation for yourself with your book, with comments like the one you just made, and also by tweaking President Trump. The last one has not gone over well with Jeff Kaufman, who is the chairman of the Iowa Republican Party. Take a listen.
We had Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska. He crosses the Missouri River and in that sanctimonious tone talks about what he doesn't like about Donald Trump, what he doesn't like about Donald Trump. You know what, Senator Sasse? I really don't care what you like. We love Donald Trump. And if you don't love him, I'd suggest you stay on your side of the Missouri River.
So, Senator, you're not taking that advice. In fact, you're going to be crossing the Missouri on Friday, going to Iowa and speaking at the Judge Joseph Story dinner. Is there any chance that you'll challenge President Trump for the Republican nomination in 2020?
Well, first of all, let's be clear why I'm going to be in Iowa this weekend. I don't want to admit it anywhere, let alone on national TV, but Nebraska lost to Iowa last year in a football game, and I lost a bet. So I have to drive Uber in Iowa next weekend. So that's the reason I'm going to be in Iowa. It's about Hawkeyes and Huskers bloodletting on the football field and the aftermath of that. But I don't know who that guy is in your segment. But here's what I believe. I believe that on the 4th of July weekend, we ought to have every kid in America having their moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas getting together and saying, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what America's about. It's not about Republicans and Democrats who have important differences on policy, screaming at each other that the other side wants to kill somebody. Politics are subordinate to the things that are supposed to unite Americans, and this is a weekend that we should be celebrating all that.
All right. Happy 4th of July to you and your family, Senator. Really appreciate your time today.
You too. Blow some stuff up with your kids tonight.
Okay.